November 1985, a small town in southern Russia. Prosecutor Tamara Lengueva sits across from another young boy at the Chergid youth club, asking the same question she's asked a dozen times before. Tell me about the experiments. The boy shifts uncomfortably. He's nervous, but there's something else in his eyes, confusion. He remembers going into the forest with Anatoly Slivko, the beloved club leader. He remembers the camera, the uniform, but then nothing, a blank space in his memory. Temporary amnesia, he calls it. That's what Slivko told him would happen. But Lengueva knows better. Over the past few weeks, she's heard the same story from multiple boys, always the same pattern. The experiments, the uniforms, the lost time. And now, 5 boys from this club have vanished without a trace. When police finally search Slivko's darkroom in December 1985, they find something that makes even the most experienced investigators sick. Photographs, films, detailed diaries, all documenting what happened during that lost time. The evidence reveals a horrifying truth. For 22 years, the most respected man in Nevinnomyssk had been living a double life. He was an award-winning filmmaker, a husband and father of 2, an honored teacher of the Soviet Union, and he was also one of the most calculating predators in Russian history. At least 43 boys, 7 murdered, and a community that never suspected a thing. If you're interested in true crime cases like this one, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode.
December 28, 1938, Izerbash, a small oil town on the Caspian Sea. Anatoly Yemelyanovich Slivko is born into a world of chaos. The Soviet Union is still reeling from Stalin's forced collectivization. Famine grips the region. Hunger is everywhere. Anatoly's family isn't just poor, they're struggling to survive. His father is an alcoholic who fights constantly with his mother. Young Anatoly is the oldest of 2 children, born into a household where nothing feels safe. The boy is sickly from the start. He suffers from insomnia. He barely eats. His body stays thin and weak. Later, doctors discover he was born with hydrocephalus, excess fluid on the brain. This condition causes him ongoing health problems throughout his childhood, including bedwetting and other urinary issues that humiliate him. When World War II breaks out, Anatoly is only 3 years old. His father is conscripted into the Red Army and sent to fight the Nazis. He's eventually captured and becomes a prisoner of war. When he finally returns home after the war ends, everything changes. In Soviet society, being a POW carries a terrible stigma. People assume you are either a coward or a collaborator. Anatoly's father faces constant ridicule. And young Anatoly, now a teenager, gets bullied mercilessly at school because of it. Your father's a coward. He surrendered. He's a traitor. The taunting never stops. Anatoly himself witnesses horrors during the war. In 1943, when he's only 5 years old, the Nazis invade his town. He sees atrocities he'll never forget. One day, he's hiding from German bombing raids in a cemetery with 4 other children. They push him away, disgusted by how thin and weak he looks. He crouches alone in the dirt and watches as mutilated bodies, both human and animal, are scattered across the street. These experiences leave deep scars. Despite his troubled childhood, Anatoly is intelligent, very intelligent, but he's a loner. He doesn't have friends. He daydreams constantly in class. His grades are average, not because he can't do the work, but because he won't focus. When he reaches puberty, Anatoly discovers 2 things that shame him deeply. First, he's attracted to other males. Second, he suffers from erectile dysfunction. In the conservative Soviet society of the 1950s, homosexuality is a crime. It's something you hide, always. These secrets isolate him even further. After school, Anatoly serves in the Soviet army, just like his father before him. When he's discharged in 1959, he's 21 years old with no clear direction in life. He takes various jobs, working as a mechanic in factories and repair shops around Georgivsk. The work is steady but unremarkable. In 1961, everything changes.
It's an ordinary day in 1961. Anatoly Slivko is 22 years old, walking through the streets of his town when he witnesses a terrible accident. A drunk motorcyclist loses control of his vehicle. The motorcycle crashes into a group of pedestrians. Among them is a teenage boy, around 13 or 14 years old, wearing a young pioneer's uniform with its distinctive red neckerchief and white shirt. The boy is fatally injured in the collision. What happens next becomes the defining moment of Slivko's life. As he stands there watching the aftermath of the accident, surrounded by the smell of gasoline from the damaged motorcycle, something inside him changes. He experiences an intense psychological reaction that he'll later describe as the first time he felt certain urges. According to his own later testimony, Slivko said the combination of specific elements from that scene became permanently fixed in his mind. The young pioneer's uniform, the smell of gasoline, the image of an unconscious person. These details would become the template for everything that followed. This single traumatic event, whether it triggered something dormant in his psychology or created something entirely new, became what he called an obsession. He felt compelled to recreate elements of what he'd witnessed. For the next 2 years, Slivko attempts to live a normal life. He moves to Nevinnomyssk in the Stavropol region looking for work. He gets a job at the Nevinnomyssk nitrogen fertilizer plant as a mechanic and lathe operator. He's good at his job, reliable. By the 1970s, he'll advance to foreman. In 1962, he marries a woman named Ludmila, a colleague from the factory. They have 2 sons, one in 1963 and another in 1964. From the outside, Anatoly looks like a normal family man, a working husband, a devoted father. But inside, the intrusive thoughts from that accident are growing stronger. The images replay in his mind. He can't escape them. By 1963, Anatoly has developed a plan to act on these compulsions.
Anatoly Slivko understands something crucial. If he wants access to boys, he needs to become someone trustworthy, someone parents respect, someone the community admires. So he starts a youth club. His first club is small but successful. Then in 1966, after that club is destroyed in a fire, he starts a new one. He calls it Chergid. It's similar to the Boy Scouts, a tourist organization for boys aged 11 to 17. The club focuses on hiking, camping, and outdoor adventures, activities that take boys away from their parents, into the woods, for days at a time. Slivko is a natural leader. He's enthusiastic. He plans elaborate expeditions into the mountains. He teaches the boys survival skills. He organizes film projects where the boys can be actors in his amateur movies. Parents love him. Their sons finally have structure, discipline, something productive to do after school. Local newspapers write glowing articles about Chergid. Radio stations broadcast stories about their adventures. Television crews interview Slivko. The Communist Party officials praise him for his dedication to Soviet youth. In 1977, he's elected deputy of the city council. That same year, he receives one of the highest honors available, honored teacher of the Soviet Union. He's not just respected, he's celebrated. Behind closed doors, Slivko is developing his method. By June 1963, he's devised a routine. Once or twice a year, he selects a boy from the club. The boy is always short for his age, always between 11 and 15, never older than 17, and always wearing a young pioneer's uniform, just like the boy from the accident. Slivko befriends the boy, gains his trust, makes him feel special. Then he tells him about an experiment. "I know a technique," Slivko explains, "that can help you grow taller. It involves controlled hanging. It stretches the spine. You'll be unconscious for a few minutes, but I'll revive you. You won't feel anything." Some boys are hesitant.
So Slivko adds another layer. We're making a film, a war movie, about a partisan soldier executed by the Nazis. You'll play the soldier. I'll film the hanging scene. It'll look very realistic. But don't worry, it's completely safe. The boys believe him. Why wouldn't they? He's an award-winning filmmaker, a respected teacher. Their parents trust him. Before each experiment, Slivko follows the same ritual. He buys the boy a brand new Young Pioneers uniform. He polishes the shoes until they gleam. He instructs the boy not to eat for several hours before filming to prevent vomiting. Then they go into the woods, or sometimes into a locked room at the Chergid clubhouse. Slivko sets up his camera on a tripod. He arranges the lighting. He places a noose around the boy's neck and tells him to relax. The rope is attached to a controlled mechanism that Slivko has designed. He pulls it tight. The boy loses consciousness in seconds, and then while the camera records, Slivko does what he came to do.
Once the boy loses consciousness, Anatoly Slivko's true intentions become clear. He removes the uniform carefully. He positions the unconscious victim in various poses. The camera records everything. He photographs from multiple angles. He commits acts of abuse that the boy will never remember. He keeps certain items as trophies. The shoes are particularly significant to him. He stores them carefully, sometimes cutting them in half before keeping them. The entire process is methodical, clinical, calculated. He takes his time, knowing exactly how long he has before he needs to revive his victim. In most cases, after about 10 to 15 minutes, Slivko brings the boy back to consciousness. He's perfected the technique through practice. He knows precisely how long he can maintain the state of unconsciousness without causing permanent harm. The boys wake up confused, disoriented, their memories fragmented. They remember the camera, the uniform, the rope. Then, nothing. A blank space where those missing minutes should be. Temporary amnesia, Slivko explains calmly, his voice reassuring. It's a normal side effect of the experiment. The blood flow restriction causes brief memory loss. Don't worry about it. And don't tell anyone. They won't understand the science behind what we're doing. The boys accept this explanation. They go home. They carry on with their lives, never knowing what happened during those lost minutes. They keep the secret, as Slivko instructed. After all, they trust him. He's their teacher, their mentor. Why would he lie? Over 22 years, Slivko performs this ritual on at least 43 boys. 36 of them walk away with their lives, though not unharmed. But 7 don't. For reasons even Slivko struggles to explain in his later confessions, sometimes the ritual isn't enough to satisfy his compulsions. Sometimes he needs to go further, to recreate the accident more completely. In those cases, once the boy is unconscious, Slivko's behavior escalates from abuse to murder. He kills them. Then he dismembers the bodies, removing limbs in a methodical process. He pours gasoline over the remains, just like the gasoline that spilled during that 1961 accident. He sets everything on fire. The smell, that specific combination of gasoline and smoke, it connects him back to that moment in 1961. The motorcycle accident. The boy in the Young Pioneers uniform. The scene that started everything. After each murder, Slivko transports the remains to remote locations and buries them carefully. He keeps the shoes, the photographs, the films, all of it stored in his locked dark room. Back home, he develops the footage using chemicals he understands well from his technical work. He watches the films repeatedly, using them to satisfy his urges for months or even years afterward. But the effect is temporary. Eventually, the images lose their power. The compulsion builds again. The intrusive thoughts return. And he begins looking for another boy.
June 2nd, 1964. Nikolai Dobryshev, 15 years old, he's a runaway, which makes him vulnerable. Slivko approaches him with promises of help and shelter. They go into the woods together. Slivko performs his hanging ritual, but this time, something goes terribly wrong. Slivko is unable to revive the boy. Nikolai dies. In a panic, Slivko destroys the evidence. He disposes of the body and burns the photographs and film. He buries the remains in a location he'll later forget. Years afterward, he'll claim this death was unintentional, that he made a mistake with the timing, that he tried desperately to save the boy, but failed. Maybe that's true, or maybe he's just not ready to admit what he's becoming. May 1965, less than a year later. Alexei Kovalenko becomes his second victim. This time, the pattern is different. Slivko doesn't try to revive him. The killing is deliberate. He disposes of the body using the same methods, keeps the shoes as trophies. After this, Slivko establishes Chergid officially. Now he has a legitimate organization, a steady stream of boys whose parents trust him completely. For 8 years, he exercises restraint. He performs his rituals on dozens of boys, but he always brings them back to consciousness. He watches his films, studies his photographs. The images keep his compulsions at bay, barely. November 14th, 1973. Alexander Nesmyanov, 15 years old. He's an active member of Chergid, one of the boys who looks up to Slivko as a mentor and role model. Slivko has been cultivating their friendship, making the boy feel special, chosen for something important. Nesmyanov tells his parents he's going to meet with Slivko to work on a film project. He never returns home. When the boy is reported missing, Slivko doesn't panic or hide. Instead, he does something calculated. He actively participates in the search. He prints missing person posters using the club's resources. He organizes search parties with other Chergid members. He makes absolutely certain those search parties avoid the areas where he knows the body is buried. It's a brilliant strategy. By appearing helpful and concerned, he positions himself as a grieving mentor rather than a suspect. 2 years pass without incident. May 11th, 1975. Andrei Pogasyan, 11 years old. He's one of the youngest victims. Before leaving home, he tells a neighbor he's going to participate in a film Slivko is making in the forest. The neighbor later mentions this detail to police during the investigation. Pogasyan's mother confirms the story. Yes, her son was going to be in one of Slivko's movies. He'd been in several before. The films had won awards. Why would she suspect anything? The police know Slivko by reputation. They know about his awards, his commendations, his standing in the community. When they question him about Pogasyan's disappearance, he admits the boy was a member of Chergid, but firmly denies any involvement in what happened. He seems genuinely concerned, cooperative, helpful. The police believe him. After all, he's an honored teacher. He has certificates of excellence, letters of commendation from Communist Party officials. A man like that couldn't be involved. They investigate other possibilities, and eventually the case goes cold. Pogasyan's body remains buried in the forest, undiscovered. 5 more years pass. Slivko continues his non-lethal rituals with other boys, continues filming, continues watching the footage, but the compulsion to recreate the accident more completely keeps growing stronger. 1980. Sergei Fatsiev, 13 years old. Another trusted member of Chergid. He vanishes after telling his family he's meeting with the club leader. By this point, Slivko's behavior has evolved. The murders are no longer impulsive, they're carefully planned. He documents everything meticulously. He arranges the scenes precisely before photographing them. Every detail is designed to maximize the psychological effect. 1981. Vyacheslav Khovistik, 15 years old. The pattern repeats. The hanging ritual, the documentation, the disposal, the burial in a remote location. July 23, 1985. Sergei Pavlov, 13 years old. Before leaving home, he tells a neighbor he's meeting with the leader of Chergid to make a movie about partisans. He becomes Slivko's 7th and final murder victim. But this time, something is different. This time, people start asking the right questions.
When Sergei Pavlov disappears, police initially treat it as a runaway case. They tell his mother not to worry, boys run away all the time. But Pavlov's parents don't believe it. Their son wouldn't just leave. They start asking questions. They go to Chergid. They talk to other boys in the club. And they hear something strange. Several boys mention experiments, tests that Slivko performed, something about hanging, about growing taller. And afterward, they couldn't remember what happened. Pavlov's mother goes directly to prosecutor Tamara Lunguieva. Lunguieva is different from the other investigators. She doesn't dismiss the concerns. She starts looking into Chergid's activities. On the surface, everything seems normal. The club is well run. The parents are happy. Slivko has awards, commendations, an impeccable reputation. But Lunguieva keeps digging. She interviews boys from the club one by one. They all tell similar stories. The experiments, the uniforms, the temporary amnesia. Some boys seemed confused by the questions. Others seemed traumatized, even if they don't understand why. By November 1985, Lunguieva has connected the dots. Over the past 12 years, 5 boys associated with Chergid have vanished. Nesmyanov, Pogasian, Fatsiev, Hovistik, Pavlov. All of them disappeared after mentioning they were meeting with Slivko. She gets a warrant. In December 1985, police search Slivko's home in Stavropol and the Chergid clubhouse. At his house, they find little. But at the club, they discover a locked, dark room. Inside, they find hell. Photographs covering the walls. Hundreds of them. Boys in Young Pioneers uniforms, boys hanging from ropes, boys unconscious, boys being assaulted, boys dismembered. Films, reels and reels of footage documenting every ritual. Detailed diaries where Slivko recorded each experiment, each hanging, each murder. Knives, axes, coils of rope, rubber hoses, and shoes. Dozens of pairs of boys' shoes, some of them cut in half. On December 6, 1985, Anatoly Slivko is arrested at his home. He's 47 years old.
Initially, Slivko denies everything, but when confronted with the photographs, the films, the diaries, he breaks. He confesses to all of it. Between January and February 1986, Slivko leads investigators to 6 burial sites. They recover the remains of Nesmyanov, Pogasian, Fatsiev, Hovistik, Pavlov, and Kovalenko. The bodies are exactly where he said they'd be, dismembered and burned, just as he described. Only one body remains missing, Nikolai Dobryshev, his first victim from 1964. Slivko can't remember where he buried him. Too much time has passed. Slivko is formally charged with 7 counts of murder, 7 counts of sexual abuse, and 7 counts of necrophilia. His trial takes place in Nevinnomyssk in June 1986. The community is in shock. How could this happen? How could the man they celebrated, the man they gave awards to, be capable of such horror? At trial, Slivko pleads not guilty to murder. He claims all 7 deaths were accidents. Mistakes. He didn't mean to kill any of them. He just wanted to recreate the scene from 1961, the hanging ritual, the uniforms, the smell of gasoline. He needed it. The prosecution presents overwhelming evidence. The photographs, the films, the diaries, the dismembered bodies, the gasoline-soaked remains. This wasn't accidental. This was deliberate, calculated, repeated. The jury doesn't even need to deliberate. Within hours, they return with a verdict. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentences Anatoly Slivko to death. He appeals to the Supreme Court of Russia. The appeal is rejected. Slivko is transferred to Novocherkassk prison to await execution. He'll spend the next 3 years on death row. In 1989, something unusual happens. Detective Viktor Burakov, investigating another serial killer in the Rostov region, asks to interview Slivko. This other killer, known as the Forest Strip Killer, has murdered at least 29 people by this point, mostly women and children. The police want Slivko's insight. How does a serial killer think? How do they operate without detection for so long? What advice can he offer? Slivko agrees to the interviews. He writes letters to investigators. He provides detailed explanations of how he maintained his public image while committing his crimes. He talks about the psychology of manipulation, the importance of trust, the way predators select vulnerable victims. Some of his advice is useful, but much of it turns out to be wrong or incompatible with the other case. The forest strip killer operates differently than Slivko did. That unidentified killer is Andrei Chikatilo. He'll be arrested in November 1990 and eventually convicted of killing 52 women and children. But by then, Slivko is already dead. September 16, 1989. Hours after his final interview with investigators, Anatoly Slivko is taken from his death row cell to a soundproofed room in Novocherkassk prison. He's executed with a single gunshot to the back of the head. The standard Soviet method. He's 50 years old, the man who spent 22 years recreating a traffic accident. The man who assaulted 43 boys. The man who murdered 7 children. The honored teacher of the Soviet Union. Gone. The case of Anatoly Slivko is one of the most disturbing in Soviet criminal history, not just because of what he did, but because of how long he got away with it. 22 years, 7 murdered children, 36 assaulted, and the entire time he was celebrated. Parents trusted him, the community praised him, the government gave him awards. How did no one see it? Part of the answer is his position. He understood that people don't suspect authority figures, especially ones with stellar reputations. He built a persona of respectability, brick by brick. Every award, every certificate, every newspaper article was another layer of protection. The boys who survived his rituals couldn't report what they didn't remember. The ones who disappeared were often treated as runaways because their parents trusted Slivko. When mothers mentioned he'd been filming with their sons, police dismissed it because they knew he was an award-winning filmmaker. The system protected him because it didn't want to believe someone like him could be a monster. There's also the question of what created Anatoly Slivko. Was he born this way? Or did that traffic accident in 1961 trigger something that was already there? Slivko himself suggested that better sexual education might have helped. In letters to investigators, he wrote, "If I had had knowledge of sexual perversions, I might have gone to a doctor as soon as the first abnormal symptoms appeared." Maybe that's true. Or maybe it's just another manipulation, one last attempt to shift responsibility. What we know for certain is that 7 boys lost their lives. 36 others were violated in ways they don't even remember, and countless families were destroyed by grief and betrayal. The case remains a stark reminder: monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like teachers, neighbors, community leaders, people we trust, people we admire, and that's what makes them so dangerous. What do you think about this case? Could it have been prevented if the police had investigated more thoroughly after the first disappearances? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this case compelling, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and check out our other true crime documentaries. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.